tonight we're here to hear from the Blissful Hiker. Alison Young is a Rover member, and many of you, most of you probably know her. She's presented for us before, and she was a professional flutist and an American public media radio host. And now she describes herself as a solo female, middle-aged, titanium reinforced long distance backpacker. She has a website with a blog and does podcasts as the Blissful Hiker. And she's hiked on 6 continents. And in 1 year, she walked the length of New Zealand and also the Pacific Crest Trail. So she's pretty ambitious in her hiking. So now I'm going to turn it over to Alison. Take it away.
Great. Thank you so much, Fran, for that really lovely introduction. I have done a lot of hiking and I have been really quite ambitious. And when she mentioned, I think about 2 months ago or something, that you guys were looking specifically for a presentation on Isle Royale, I said, well, I'd be happy to talk about Isle Royale because I walked it during COVID, which was a kind of interesting time. And actually, I was there before I became titanium reinforced. So that's a little bit of the story. I am a solo female, middle-aged, long-distance backpacker, and I have backpacked on 6 continents. This is actually a picture of being in the Drakensberg Traverse in South Africa. I've walked the PCT, the Te Araroa, Gers5 and the French Alps, Chile's O Circuit and the Torres del Paine K2 base camp, a lot of really interesting places, but it's really thrilling to live in Minnesota and in the Great Lakes because we have amazing hikes here too. And this is a great picture of the glamorous life of a thru hiker. Anybody will know what this feels like to hike in June. On the Superior Hiking Trail, I decided to just see what would happen if I thru hiked it. And it was very rainy and there were a lot of bugs. So I'm just going to quickly there. So I've done the Superior Hiking Trail, the Kekakabik, the border route, and somehow I'd never gotten to Isle Royale. We've lived here 15 years and I'd done all this hiking and I never went there. It's like so close, yet so far. Most of you know where Isle Royale is. It's kind of the squinty eyeball in the growling wolf profile of Lake Superior. It's about 300 miles from Duluth up to Grand Portage, and then it's 15 miles out from shore. So from St. Paul, it's a pretty decent drive. Do I have that? No, 300 miles from St. Paul. That's right. I'm exaggerating, but it feels really far. So it's a difficult place to get to. And it's a magical place that feels completely removed from the rest of the world. It's 45 miles long and 9 miles wide. 15 miles away from shore, as I mentioned. And am I on the right page here? No, I am not. Let's go there. And kind of interesting that it's the largest island in Lake Superior and the least visited national park in the United States. I mean, this includes Denali, and that's because Isle Royale is closed in the wintertime and it can be accessed only by boat and seaplane. And it's the only park also in the United States that closes in the winter, completely closes down. The island is known as Minong by the Ojibwe, and it's part of an archipelago of 400 miles, kind of a boater's dream. If we were all together right now and I could see a show of hands, how many people have kayaked at Isle Royale? It's a really, really great place for that because it's surrounded by water. It's filled with bays and harbors, basins. And then inland, you have swamps and inland lakes, and some of them you can portage to. A note here, though, if you're thinking of backpacking on Isle Royale, there aren't actually that many streams. So you find yourself having to actually do water carries, which is very unusual for the upper Great Lakes. So it's made up of long ridges that run southwest to northeast. It's a tilted strata of volcanic rock. The geologic term for Isle Royale is a geologic syncline, a kind of fold in rock layers from volcanic activity that happened 18 million years ago. And what's interesting is you see this activity like this interbedded volcanic and sedimentary rock conglomerate. It looks as though somebody has actually laid down this path for me to walk on. And you see the remnants of basalt, just gorgeous. When it was cooled, it settled and broke into geometric patterns. I mean, this one I love because it looks like a heart with bright orange lichen. Other little fun facts about Isle Royale: it was given to the United States by the British in 1783, but it kind of rests too high up in Lake Superior. So there was a lot of confusion about who actually owned it, at least as far as Europeans were concerned, for another 60 years or so. And as far back as human beings had been there, it had been mined for valuable minerals. And there's some activity that was recorded in the 17th century by a Jesuit missionary who mentioned the copper mines that were there. The Ojibwe would actually mine by hand copper. And the Ojibwe gave it up. I'm sure there's a lot of history there that I'm passing by, but they gave up the rights to the copper to Americans, but mining only lasted for about 10 years because it wasn't very productive. But you do see these remnants of mines throughout the island as you walk. Isle Royale, like much of the North Shore and Minnesota's Northland, is in the transition zone between broadleaf biome and boreal forest. So you have pines and hardwoods: aspen, ash, maples, balsam fir, white spruce, jack pine, and of course, things that grow on jack pine. Lots and lots of mushrooms I saw. But what's really curious to me about Isle Royale is that people have visited the island for 3,000 years. No one has ever really lived there. There's no real record of anyone staying at least through the entire winter. There's been logging, mining, fish camps, resorts. There's actually one really terrifying story about an Ojibwe woman and her Voyager husband who were stranded over the winter. Somehow they got stuck there and they became crazy with hunger. He threatened to kill her and eat her. And she made a really quick plan, took her hair out of her head and created these woven nets to catch fish in holes. So they survived until they were rescued. So it's got a kind of dramatic history. Also, the animals are quite unusual. There are no skunks or raccoons or porcupine on Isle Royale. Of course, we have plenty of them in the North Shore area. No bears either. But there's beaver, otters, red foxes, red squirrels, frogs. There's even a garter snake that has kind of an unusual marking that's not like any other garter snake around. And so for kind of a comparison, there's 40 mammal species on the mainland and only 18 on Isle Royale, including wolves and moose. So interestingly enough, the rangers tell me that no one knows exactly how all these animals got there specifically. They probably came across the ice, but did a hawk or something have a garter snake and drop it? We don't really know for sure. But what we do know is that because the wolves and the moose are there, Isle Royale is the location of the longest study of predator-prey relationship in a closed environment in the world. It's been going on for over almost 70 years now, I guess. And so you're almost guaranteed to see a moose. And in this case, as you can see, you're almost guaranteed to see wolf tracks and hear them. So anyway, Isle Royale has 165 miles of trails. It's open, not in the winter, April 16th through October 31st. And I chose a kind of intense path, 90 miles in a loop from one end to the other, with a little bit of backtracking. And I did it over 9 days. I mean, it was 7 days with a couple of halves on each side. And just to note here, the way I tell this story, because I went during COVID, there were a lot of differences than what you would have normally now if you were planning to go to Isle Royale and do your own hike. There were no ferries running at all. And the Menong Trail, at least from Todd Harbor to Windigo, so this would be, if you're looking at this map right now, sort of the entire eastern north section of the island was closed to walking. And the reason for that is the Menong Trail is very, very beautiful. It's very rugged. It's a lot of cliff walking. And they felt that because the COVID protocols would be so difficult to maintain, they didn't have enough staff to handle it. This was before they had any kind of vaccine. They didn't want to have to do any rescues. So they completely closed that section down. They also closed the island to any kind of off campsite backpacking. So you had to camp and stay in actual campsites that were already designated. So it was a little bit different. And in fact, it was kind of an interesting time for me because I had walked those two big hikes. I did 5,000 miles in a year. It was a little crazy. Part of the reason for that was because arthritis runs in my family, and I was already seeing it really bad in my hands and my feet. I was starting to get the feeling that my time was running out. And so I went for these really intense hikes over a year. And then I came back to the United States. We built a voice studio. I'm a voice artist, and COVID hit. And so I was only doing like day hikes. I wasn't doing anything. And I actually thought that Isle Royale was completely closed until a friend of mine told me, no, they were flying the planes. They still had it open. None of the restaurants were open, no services at all in the stores or anything. But you could fly there. And so this was the first overnight backpack trip I did. So 8 nights when after I had done all of that backpacking. And I was just starting to feel some weird pain in my body. And I thought, okay, I just pulled a muscle. Something's going on, but I don't know what it is. And I'm going to completely ignore it. And I'm going to go on this hike, but I'm going to plan enough time so that I can go fairly slowly. I mean, no more than 10 to 15 miles a day at absolute max. So flying there is really, really fun. It's super cool. You go in these tiny single engine float planes, but it is expensive. It was $250 to $285 one way from Grand Marais or Grand Marais was Minnesota or Hancock, Michigan. And if you go, which is what they call three-way, which is kind of strange, you're taken from Grand Marais to one side of the island and then picked up at the other side of the island and brought back. It's $366. So I think that's kind of steep. It's expensive, but I thought it was really worth it. And it was very, very fun. And when I got on the plane, we're in our masks. We have to have the COVID test and all of those things. And he was doing his little safety check and making sure I was all locked in. And then he said, I just want to remind you, there's no smoking on the plane. And I thought, how am I going to smoke through my mask? But anyway, he was really nice. Really gorgeous to fly because you get views like this. If you take a ferry, it's cheaper. Of course, they weren't running that year. But it's about an hour and a half to get there from, again, from either the Keweenaw Peninsula in Michigan or northern Minnesota, probably Grand Portage is where you go from. It's about $60 to $100 one way. And for both of them, there is, weather windows. So we had pretty serious fog that morning. So my flight didn't take off for many, many hours later. And that's not a big deal when you're leaving. But of course, when you're coming back, it's really a problem. So actually, when we landed and picked up the people that were coming back, they had been waiting for a plane for 2 days. And imagine if everything's closed down, what that means. It means you just have to have more food and really be prepared. But we got there to beautiful weather. I flew into Windigo, which is in the south western side of the island. Those are moose antlers. They shed the antlers every year. And just to give you a little bit of information about how much it costs, it's $7 per day as an entry fee. Or you can get the Isle Royale season pass, which is $60. So 9 days times 7 is 63. So I got the Isle Royale season pass, $60 to cover my trip. And that covers 3 adults, ages 16 and up, but they all have to be hiking with you. So if you're in a group, it's a pretty good deal. If you have the federal recreation pass, like the America the Beautiful pass, Isle Royale is a national park, so you can use that as well. And that waives the fee for the holder and 3 other adults. It's always best to pay for this online and in advance. When I got there, there were no lines because there were so few people there. There was only me coming in on that plane that day to Windigo. But normally it's really congested because the ferries are coming in and people are all waiting to talk to the rangers. So you want to make as many plans as you can ahead. I love this picture of Jenna. She was so cute. And we had to communicate outside, mainly with like our eyebrows, kind of figuring out, where I was going to go. So what's really different about Isle Royale than something like the Porcupine Mountains, you do not have to choose specifically where you're going to stay and absolutely stay there and say, I'm paying my $7 each day and I will stay at this spot. You can change your mind. You can go a different direction. They just kind of want to know where you're planning to go. So the permit is required for all overnight stay. They call it cross-country camping, which is kind of dispersed camping, and that was not allowed at the time I was there. It's kind of fun. That means, you're finding kind of your own stealth site. You won't have a privy or a fire ring or anything like that, and you want to leave no trace. And you have a separate permit that actually costs more for that. But for me, there were 36 campgrounds to choose from. If you are going with a group of 7 to 10 people, so anything above 6, you do have to make a reservation, and it costs a little bit more. It's like $25. And there is a limit to the consecutive nights you can stay. I could probably go for the whole time and have stayed in one place. I like to hike, so I didn't do that. But we did. Jen and I went through and kind of chose a route for me to go. And what was interesting is because I had arrived so late in the day, my plan had been to just like start walking across the island, but I didn't really have time to do that. So what she suggested was, why don't you go and visit Hugginen Cove? And what was really kind of special about Hugginen Cove, so you can sort of see it's at the top there on the map, is that it's not a place where boats can land. I mean, probably kayaks can land there, but not speedboats. I don't think that there's a dock. And so it's really only open to people who have tents and are really kind of bringing small stuff with them, backpackers or kayakers. And it's a very beautiful spot to go. I had just this lovely little walk as I went through, and I was thinking of her leave no trace speech and how she said, leave everything behind, but of course you can eat the berries, which were amazing. The thimbleberries were great. I forgot to mention that I went on, I think it was August 24th is when I traveled there. So late August, no bugs, but lots of berries. And this is a very typical look of a trail going through the forest on Isle Royale. It's very, very wet, and they do a good job of building these gorgeous boardwalks. I will say that they're fairly slippery when you get on them if they're damp. And a couple of other things. All of the stores were closed, and so you can't carry fuel with you on the plane. So you have to order it ahead, and they bring it over there because there are some boats that were going. Obviously, they were bringing the rangers and supplying them. And so they had this like cage where you picked out, you paid for it, you picked out your fuel, and then of course you never finished it. So you put it in at the other side, and somebody finally finished it. But anyways, really, really fun. That first walk was a great day. I had a little small accident, but I won't tell you about that. It all worked out in the end. I got to Hugginen Cove, and no boats land here. It was really isolated. It was really quiet. These are the kind of maps you see, and it just shows you, you choose whichever site you want. Somebody was already in site number 2, which looked kind of right out to the cove. And it was so interesting when I came because they had this sort of beatific look, like they were at church watching the sunset. So I was really, really quiet. And I took a look at all of the other sites. They're nice sites, but they were in the forest. And then I thought, wait a minute, site 1. And you can see it's up there on the side. I went up to site 1, and it was fabulous. It was perfect. I was right on the edge. And I had a great view of the sunset. There was a privy there. Here's the privy protocols that they leave for you, all of the leave no trace information. For those of you who don't know what leave no trace is, it's like, don't leave anything behind, don't leave any of your garbage, don't make noise, which I thought was interesting. They actually have quiet hours. Be considerate, don't put anything into the privy but toilet paper. And this was my view of, of the first night, and all of that fog had disappeared. I just got this beautiful sun kind of sinking into to the horizon. I'm looking towards the cliffs of Canada. You can kind of see some of those high cliffs near Sleeping Giant. One of the things that Jenna had told me as I went out, besides like leave no trace, and besides the fact that they didn't know exactly how the animals got there, she mentioned that this whole moose and wolf population study has been really very interesting, but the wolves have dwindled as the moose have gotten a larger population. So scientists have decided to reintroduce wolves to kind of make things more balanced. And they don't really know exactly where they are on the island. So she said, if you saw footprints, take a picture, tell us where it is. If you see poop, tell us where it is. If you hear them, tell us where you heard them. But she also mentioned that sometimes the rangers try to call the wolves. So if you hear a wolf howl that sounds exactly the same, like 3 times, it's a ranger. Apparently the wolves can't figure that out, but people can. So I thought that was kind of cute. So I did take a lot of pictures of wolf footprints, etc. So Windigo, I mean, Hugginen was really, really beautiful. And I did that sort of loop around the Windigo mines and came back into the little village, or the little sort of area where the ranger station is in Windigo, and through the harbor again. It was a really, really foggy day. I woke up with slugs all over my tent, and I did kind of a long day. It was 15 miles. It was a pretty significant day. And I went down the Feldman Loop, so down to Feldman Lake. And this is not as often visited. And so it's a pretty special section of the hike that you might want to add. If you don't want to just do that greenstone, which is the top, which most people do, just kind of come around and add another day. It's really special. Again, I had these kind of cool boardwalks that they build that are very slippery, and lots of forest creatures, shell fungus. And I love this guy. It looks like the frilly collars, from the Dutch in the 15th century, and these puffballs. I'm not entirely sure what these are. And so I just took a picture, did not try to eat them. Lots of beavers. I have no idea how the beavers got there. They're not sure if they swam. That's pretty far for a beaver to swim 15 miles, but there are a lot of beaver on the island. And that means that you're going to be wet everywhere, because they're closing up all the streams and making these kind of wetlands, so they have an area to fish. And because I was really close to Windigo, they have interpretive signs. So I got to this moose wolf sign that was telling me about the study. And one of the things they don't know for sure is if the moose walked there, they would have walked on the ice or swam there, or if they were introduced because hunters wanted something to hunt. What they do know is that there were no moose until the early 1900s. And so moose started taking over the island. And as soon as the moose established themselves, the wolves followed them. And they definitely walked over on the ice. And so this kind of relationship, this interconnected survival began. And I was reading the sign and kind of getting into my own little space. And suddenly I heard that of a moose. And I turned around, and there he was. And I've put this picture up on the socials, and people are like, "You're way too close to that moose." And well, first of all, I've used a telephoto to get a picture of him. And of course, there's absolutely right. The rule of thumb is that if you see a moose, you can hold your thumb up and it should cover the moose entirely. And then you're far enough away from him. Of course, even just looking at, the screen right now, I'm not covering up that moose. So I was way too close, but he was standing there, and I was on the trail, and I kind of just backed up a little bit, but he didn't move. It wasn't rut. He wasn't looking particularly aggressive. So I just snapped his picture and very quietly continued on the trail, and I was fine. He didn't even flinch. So you climb out of the forest, you go onto a ridge, and you're looking out now into this, kind of the sort of waves of all of this ancient magma of Isle Royale. And this is a very special place you get to above Feldman Lake. You are an ancient lake bed. You're probably 150 feet above the lake at this point, and you're with smooth stones under your feet. Really, really special. I mean, they're the same kind of stones that you would find right now at Lake Superior. They're that smooth from many, millennia ago. Feldman Lake was very special. It's an inland lake. No campfires are allowed, no big boats. It was very quiet, and I was the first person there. It was pretty much empty, and so I got the best sight. And for those of you who are using this talk to list where the best sites are, I would say number 2 for sure. I mean, look at this. I'm right on the lake. I'm not in the forest, but I'm kind of there. And that's my little tarp tent. I actually, I can share with those of you who are interested in my gear, in my gear closet, if you want to. I think maybe I can put in the chat a sign up for an email, and I can share with you more about my gear. That's a tarp tent. I don't know how many of you are familiar with tarp tent or use them. They're set up with your trekking poles. It has Dyneema outside of the tarp, and then the inside is a little tiny tent that you fit inside, and so you really are protected. You have 2 layers, but it's very light and only weighs 1 pound and packs pretty small. I was told to tie my shoes to my trekking pole. This is setting up my tent because of the foxes. So I did that when I took a little walk. And from Feldman Lake, you can go out to Lake Superior to Rainbow Cove. It's about a mile, maybe a little more than a mile. And it was so beautiful. It was totally deserted. And so now you're on the south side of the island. So you have a lot of Lake Superior. You really don't see land. I mean, that portion of land that you're seeing is part of the island. You're not seeing any mainland from here. It was a very flat lake. I had beautiful light, this huge buried buoy, and kind of the way the light was coming in. And I built this wee cairn. Now, this is against all leave no trace rules. So I built this cairn with stones that are about this big. And I just set it up just for the portrait of the photo. And then I knocked them over because they really don't like to have any sort of human art. We can maybe call it art, but it's kind of nice to just leave things natural. And I headed back before dark to get to my tent. And look who was waiting for me. There was the red fox that I was told about, who waits for handouts. And so the really important thing to do, I don't necessarily think we don't need a bear canister because there's no bears. You probably don't even need an ursack, but you need to put your food out of reach in some form or fashion. I don't even think I took an ursack. I think I just took, a nylon bag and kind of put things in plastic, but hung it out of reach. If you had it in your tent, forget it, that little fox would get it. So when I woke up the next morning, I was really getting excited because now, as you can see on the Feldman Ridge, there's a fire tower, and I was going up to a high point that was going to be super beautiful, but I woke up in drizzle. And for those of you who are backpackers and know that when you wake up, that's the worst time for drizzle. Going to sleep when it's raining is great. Maybe hiking in rain, okay, fine. But waking up is the worst because you have to pack everything wet and you're kind of cold and you haven't started yet. So I tried to have a good attitude, and I thought maybe it'll slow down as I'm moving along to go to Sisquit Bay, which is going to be my next night. Not a very long hike at all. So these moments require a very different way of looking at things. You can't look out, you have to look down. And I'm looking at these, beautiful fungus everywhere in my enchanted forest. I like to say that the forest looks a little bit like the forest where the knights who say knee, from Monty Python's Holy Grail. It was that kind of darkness. And, you can't help but giggle looking at these little bulges and delighting in canine footprints, lots of them around. And you're kind of wondering, where are the wolves? Are they watching me? Are they nearby? I will remind everyone, and the ranger told me this too, moose are far more dangerous than wolves. Wolves have no interest in attacking a human being at any time. They keep their distance, but moose can run very fast and they're huge, so they can take you out pretty badly. And the best thing to do if a moose were to charge, first of all, you want to have your distance with your thumb, but is to get yourself behind a tree, because it's very difficult for them to maneuver to get to you. So you don't necessarily need to climb a tree. You just need to put something in between the two of you. Because Feldman Lake, the loop, is less popular, it's not as often walked, it's a little bit run down. And so the boardwalks are starting to shift a little bit. It's very wet. I use my trekking poles to set my tent. I use my trekking poles to walk, and I use my trekking poles here to stay upright. They were very, very important because this is an accident waiting to happen. And I went up and up and up, and I got to the beautiful view, and it delivered me into a whiteout. I mean, there's no view. This sad kind of sun trying as hard as it can to look out, to kind of give me some happiness on that day. You might be able to see on the branch, there was a red-tailed hawk just kind of parked there, and he was screeching, I think probably trying to let me know that don't you dare come any closer because my nest is nearby. I heard sandhill cranes crackling in the distance. And so it was kind of lovely, but I was disappointed that I was missing out. I didn't get my great view. And then a little miracle happened. As I walked, I was looking down, and there were spider webs everywhere. And because it was dewy and wet, they were getting droplets on them. And I tried as best I could to get pictures, but I don't know that I've ever seen something quite so beautiful as this moment when I didn't get quite what I wanted, but I had this other delight and this other sort of miracle. And I was the only one there, well, besides the red-tailed hawk and the cranes and the wolves that were probably watching me and the spiders that were making their webs. But it was a very, very soulful moment. And when I finally got to the tower, things weren't going to improve if I climbed it. So I didn't climb it. And I just moved on. And you start to go down into this kind of trail. Those are thimbleberries. I didn't have any more berries on the side of the island. They're pretty tall. And this makes a really good argument for bringing rain pants with you. When I did my hike on the Superior Hiking Trail, I just thought, oh, I don't need rain pants. Forget it. It was a really dumb decision because even if it's not raining, you have the car wash effect of all of those plants filled with dew or just filled with the fog left over, and it wipes along you, and then you're just soaking wet. And you, of course, if you wear wool like I do, you pick up hitchhikers along the way. Sisquot Bay was a really interesting place, and it was being repaired when I got there. And just luck of the draw, I didn't even think about it. I arrived on a Sunday, and it was a perfect day because it was a day of rest. So it was not everything was idle. So these are all of the, kind of these big cranes that were working to build a larger dock. So you can imagine this place is just hopping with fishermen and with, people just out in their yachts or sailboats or whomever. But no one was there. I had a really solitary backpacking experience. And I went for the first time into a shelter. Now, I'd heard about these shelters, but I couldn't picture them in my mind. And I thought, because I was taking a backpack, why on earth would I need to stay in a shelter? But shelters are really great. They're three-sided with wood, and they have a ceiling, but they're also like up from the ground, a few stairs. So they're sitting on stilts a little bit, which I think helps with any kind of mice or other creatures getting in. It's up high. And it has this screen porch, or, screened in area. So you don't have bugs, you don't have anything coming in. I mean, those are my feet. You can see they're resting, and my tent, which was soaking wet, is drying, hanging up. And this is kind of what it looks like inside. And I don't know, has somebody put in the chat? Let me know if anybody's put in the chat a way to sign up to my mailing list, because I'll send you the link to my gear closet. And anyone who wants to talk about gear, it's so much fun. I'm going to have a gear closet because I bring different backpacks for different events and different sleeping bags. I don't know why I brought this really warm sleeping bag. For some reason, I thought it was going to be cold, and I was never cold. It was actually very humid, even more humid, I think, than the North Shore. Just for some reason, there was a kind of lake effect or something. I was kind of damp all the time. But this is how beautiful it is to be inside. And because it was COVID, I didn't have to share it with anyone. They don't want you to share. So I had it to myself, and I was safe from the foxes. I don't know if this is not the same fox, but I'm sure they're fox friends. And this is the sunset with the wait a minute, how do you pronounce it? Acetylene and oxygen cutting torch that they left there because they figured nobody can come steal it as they're building this area. It was just very strange, all of this kind of workmanship that was just frozen at Sisquot Bay. Really, really short day that day. I think I only walked 8 miles to Sisquot Bay. This day was 10 miles going up to Lake Dezor. So my days were short, but it was kind of cool because I saw a lot. So you're leaving the south part and you're going up Island Mines. So you pass mines and you go to the Greenstone. And many of you probably heard of the Greenstone if you've done any research on the island to hike there. That's the main sort of thoroughfare that goes in the middle of the island. But what I found is that it's kind of a green tunnel. So I don't necessarily recommend it. I think going down to Feldman Loop and coming back around is pretty cool. Really lovely coastline. But it was a muddy, sloppy mess. There's a boardwalk somewhere down there. I think I'm standing on the boardwalk here. And again, I don't wear these shoes anymore. I think I was just taking some to wear out. I wear Ultras. They have a really wide toe box. They don't have any Gore-Tex. They don't have any ankle support or anything. They're very lightweight. They dry out really fast. And I use Belega socks because they also dry out really fast, and they don't seem to do as much chafing as other socks do. This is Carnelian Beach. Of course, I had to skip stones there. It was just absolutely lovely. And then I joined the Greenstone, and I am definitely in a green tunnel. I mean, you are in the forest. It's quite lovely. You have forest friends, like these guys, the golden falata. I thought these were really funny. They look like hamburger buns. And then you start to see lots of backpackers. There were more backpackers here. It's super cruisy. That's the term I would use. I moved really fast. There doesn't seem to be anything blocking you, but not as many streams as you find on like the Superior hiking trail. So again, you have to carry your water all the way from Lake Superior to Lake Dezor. And because it was COVID, they allowed a single camper like me to camp in a group site. So giving you advice on this particular site, it was a really beautiful one. It was one of the main group sites. It was gorgeous. If you're going with a group, try to grab this one. The single sites were really kind of close to each other and kind of far from the water. I had a private beach. And so I stayed up there until dark and listened to, kind of the waves coming in and the birds. And it was really, really lovely place to be. From Lake Dezor, and you can see that there's a north, I was on South Lake Dezor, there's a North Lake Dezor, but that was closed because you cannot walk on the Minong Trail. And now I knew I was going to a high point, to Ishpeming Point, 1,377 feet high. So it's the highest point of Isle Royale. And I thought, yeah, here we go. I've got some beautiful, interesting clouds. The day is clearing. Here I'm looking back to Lake Dezor. It was just a gorgeous day. And I realized that Ishpeming Point is kind of a joke amongst the rangers of the national park because there's absolutely no view whatsoever. It doesn't help to walk up to it. And besides, it was locked. So it's just sort of a point that you say, okay, here I was, and you move on from there. I think somebody left some weird things. There was like shirts and strange stuff down below. So I don't know what was going on there. But I left fairly quickly and I got to this colossal beaver dam. I think the trail used to just go along a stream and it was really, really lovely. But the beavers are, when you talk about busy as a beaver, they work like crazy. And they built this thing, these little pink, ties that you see are showing you the way to go because it's really easy to get lost. You don't think that you're going to be walking on top of a beaver dam, but that is the way to get there. And finally, I have some views of Lake Superior. So you're looking out here to some of the archipelago of the islands, and then in the distance, you're seeing towards Canada and towards the Sleeping Giant, which is the largest, highest point there near Thunder Bay. And I came into Todd Harbor. And it's really funny because at this point, I was so spoiled and I was feeling so lazy that I wanted a shelter. And there's only one shelter at Todd Harbor. And I was like gunning for it. I wanted it. And I got there and there was clothes hanging out in front. And I thought, oh, shoot, I can't camp here. So I kind of looked around at the campsites. And then I remembered, wait a minute, they allow you to camp in group sites. And so then I was gunning it for the best group site. And I passed these fellas at the dock. It's the first time I saw boaters. And they said, I know you're gunning it for your site, but, come back for beer, come back for a barbecue. So this is one of the nice little, perks of hiking on Isle Royale is that you do tend to meet people who come with coolers and usually bringing too much beer. And I did get the best site. I was on a mission and I grabbed site 1. So if you are a group of backpackers, over 7 to 10 people going to Isle Royale, look for group site 1 at Todd Harbor, and it's absolutely gorgeous. I had private cliffs, and I'm looking out there to more of the little islands and then some of the larger islands in Canada. And here's, I think I made a little video. It was absolutely unreal. Here's a little video of the sound. If any of you have had gone kayaking through the caves on the Apostle Island, you get that whoop, whoop, whoop sound. It's that same quality because it's digging its way underneath the rock and kind of splashing into it. And I had just kind of my own, a little bit Monet sunset going on here. It's a really special place. But you can't get that if you're a single backpacker. So from Todd Harbor, I am on the Menong Trail, just this part of it. So the eastern part of the Menong Trail was open to Macargo Cove, Macargo Cove. It's kind of hard to say. And there's way more people and way more boats. It was a very short day. I think it was 6 miles at the absolute most. It was raining all day. It was kind of awful. I have these views of inland lakes. There's no trail, there's no camping or anything on those. So sometimes you might get a view of a moose or loons. You hear them a lot. And in the distance, in that mist, is Lake Superior, but I couldn't see anything. And I did get a great little shelter. Shelter number 4 at McCargo Grove is the best shelter, and I got in there. And you can probably see in this picture, I have my little stove, and I have a beer. Those guys did invite me over for a barbecue, and they said, here, take a beer for the road, which was kind of nice. So I got there and I had a little beer. And while I was resting inside there, because it was raining, it was pretty nice to be inside. I looked around, and they do ask you leave no trace, like please do not carve or do anything in the shelters, and nobody listens. They do it anyway. And I thought they were kind of funny. I mean, this is Tim's 2012 solo trip. I miss Shelley. Poor Tim. He couldn't make it for 2 days without being away from Shelley. I mean, this one's kind of sad. Somebody wrote, kill the motorboaters. And I sort of understand a little bit why, because the motorboaters come in and they all steal all of those beautiful shelters with their big giant, carriers of food and in coolers and maybe even music. But on the other hand, like the backpackers are really supposed to be self-sufficient. So there's this long conversation going on back and forth between people taking different sides. And then I saw that one too, which I thought was really fun. It's like, thanks for letting us know. And then I had to ask myself, like, who brings a Sharpie with them when they're backpacking? Who knows? Maybe they were in a boat. The Cargo Cove was definitely the party part of the trip. I met these folks from Michigan. We're actually kind of still in touch, really nice people. They had wine that they carried with them, and we had a lot of laughs. Some people thinking about taking a swim, they probably just touched their toes in the water. And then these guys who did go in, there's no way. It felt so cold. I just only took their picture. And then a boat came in, and this was really kind of interesting. These guys are deep sea divers, or I guess deep lake divers. So they go down to these perfectly preserved wrecks, 150 or more feet down in Lake Superior, and they're perfectly preserved because the water is very, very cold. There's no salt. There's no creatures that eat on anything. And you have to be extremely talented to be one of these kind of divers. I mean, it takes a lot of training, and they don't use oxygen. They use helium to get down there. So it was really quite interesting. We sat out, I mean, they're very relaxed now because they're on shore, and, we had a beer and talked. And one of the things they shared with me that I found fascinating that really relates a lot to backpacking is they talked about this kind of superstitious feeling that they have about, they call it sort of the law of 3. If 3 things go wrong, they do not dive. And it can be very simple things like, oh, shoot, I brought the wrong gloves. Or, oh, I left my wallet back at the hotel. It's raining and I didn't expect rain today. And they're like, that's it, I'm not diving. So they have this kind of superstitious feeling because it's so dangerous. The margin of error is so small. They hold themselves back. And I thought that was kind of an interesting lesson, even for us as backpackers or people taking, far less risk, in terms of kind of how you allow your gut to tell you when you've gone too far. The only problem with these guys is that they're on a chartered boat, and they ran the generator all night long, which is against the rules, but there's no one to call. There's nothing to do. So that was a little bit of a problem. And my tip for everyone, anytime you're backpacking anywhere and anytime, always take earplugs with you, because you never know if you're going to be able to sleep. So from McCargo Cove, I went inland around all of these beautiful lakes, down to Mosky Basin, which is a very, very special place. It was quite beautiful. I had forgotten my water bottle on the dock. And so I went down and got this beautiful sunrise all to myself, kind of in these interesting patterns of reflections. Joe Biden showed up to Isle Royale while I was there. More beavers, and then these beautiful inland lakes. but it's kind of a sad situation right now. This is Chicken Bone Lake, and all of these lakes in this particular area are closed to collecting water. And the reason for this is because of a blue-green algae that is toxic to humans. You can't boil out the toxins and you can't filter out the toxins. So Lake Ritchie, Intermediate Lake, Chicken Bone have a water warning. And I mean, look how beautiful these campsites are. I sat here and had lunch with the water that I'd brought with me. And I was warned before I went, but it's really, really quite a shame that they're closed. But I went down to Mosky Basin. And here's the ranger. So if you think that you can just show up there and camp anywhere you want without a permit, no such luck. They are pretty serious. This is an international boundary. You're in waters that people from Canada can come through. So the rangers carry weapons, and they are very serious about taking people off the island if they need to be sent back. He didn't do that with me. He just looked at my permit and let me take his picture. And look at this beautiful site. So I chose a shelter here, shelter number 2. Again, that's the best one at Mosky Basin. And I have this beautiful veranda, my own little picnic table, and a swimming area. And it was really sunny and really warm. And I was feeling so happy. So quite different from Todd Harbor or from Macargo Cove, which was cold and rainy and the water looked cold. Here, you're in so far, it's more shallow. The water's kind of warming up. And so it felt more like, an inland lake. And I just knew I wanted to go swimming. So I explored around and I thought, I am going to jump in, but I am not the diving in kind of swimmer. I am a get used to it kind of swimmer, 1 foot at a time. So I sat there for a long, long time, and unfortunately, I do not have photographs of what happened to me because it was so horrifying. My legs were in the water. I finally went swimming. I felt wonderful, came out and sat on the rocks. And I thought, well, that's really strange. I have these kind of pine needles on my legs. They weren't pine needles. They were leeches. Thousands of leeches. I mean, they come in swarms. They were all over me. They were little, but I had to pull them all off. And, it's like pulling mucus. They kind of go like this, and they're still attached to you. And then if you pull them off, they're attached to your fingers. So I tried to I have little tweezers to get them off, and they were full of blood. It was horrifying. But I finally got them off. I didn't want to go swimming again. I walked away. I tried to feel like, okay, let's get grounded here. Let's feel better. And I took a little walk to the end of the dock and saw this kind of orange fence because the dock had been damaged. And behind it, as I'm catching my breath, I saw some movement. And that movement was an otter. So I went from like horrified leeches to this beautiful animal. I mean, I've really gone into a telephoto lens here, but an otter that was kind of doing his toilette. He was, kind of working on his fur and cleaning things out. And I was wondering, how on earth did he get up there? It's pretty high. And just as I thought that, another one just plopped right up. They just sort of heaved their bodies and all their blubber right up onto this kind of safe place. And he's looking at me with a little look like, what is that? He couldn't tell what it was behind the orange. But they're very, very sleek, and they have this absolutely gorgeous fur. And finally, they jumped back in. And they swim. They look a little bit different than beaver, but I saw a beaver cross here as well, and this gorgeous sunset as the wolves were howling. So I don't want to go over time too much. I decided from here to go up to Mount Ojibwe and go over Mount Franklin, over the highest, it's not the highest point, but of that highest side on that side of the island, and go down to Lane Cove, which is a very special place for kayakers. You can see all of those bays and all of those islands. It's just a kayaker's dream. And I had this kind of sunrise in the morning. Of course, you know what they say, red sky in morning. Sailors take warning, hikers take warning as well. Just got very, very windy that day. I passed a massive campground, huge Daisy Farm, which has so many shelters and so many places. Daisy Farm is really easy to get to from Rock Harbor, which is the far side that I was going to. So it was really quite full with people coming in on sailboats as well. So here's a view from Mount Ojibwe Tower. Finally, a really big view looking out. Here's another view. I just kind of tried to get the shape of the island looking in and all of the water. And I met a hiker coming up at Mount Franklin, which was quite beautiful. And he looked very worried when I told him I was going down to Lane Cove. And he said, there's a beaver dam there. There's a beaver dam. And I'm like, I'm good. I've done a beaver dam. I think I can handle it. And then he said, and there's bees. And I thought, bees? And I'm pretty allergic to bees. I have to carry the Benadryl with me. So if I get stung by one, I really need to take it right away. I don't need an EpiPen, but I have to do that. Otherwise, I just really swell up. So I knew I needed to be careful. And he wasn't kidding. There was a sign at the bridge. It's kind of a more of a walkway that said bees are under bridge about 2/3 the way down. And somebody even wrote again on it. They said, no joke. But the good thing is for me is that it was raining slightly. So because it was raining, they were all back in the nest and I didn't see any of them, but they apparently made a nest right under the bridge. So if you were crossing over it, they could be swarming there. And it's kind of dangerous because the sound that you make as you're walking on something that's hollow like that kind of gives them a sense that there's danger. So they may come out and attack you. Lane Cove was really, really beautiful. This is from site 2. Again, if you're taking notes on that, it was quiet. It was solitary. I saw one kayaker and I heard loons all night long. I mean, it was the woo sound and also the just constant. And it was really magical there. A lot of rain. So as I mentioned, it's really quite protected there. It's beautiful for kayaks. You can see like out there at Blake Point and over near Robinson Bay on this particular map, you can see, or Bell Island, all those little campsites that you can only get to by a kayak or a canoe. I don't think you can take a speedboat to them. I actually am not entirely sure on that, but this is really a dreamy place and it's fairly protected, unless it's not. So when I woke up, the wind was really howling. And even in my little protected area with the trees over me, my tent was getting buffeted. And here I am at my little beach of my site. And the waves are pretty big, in a pretty protected cove. This is my last day. And I'm thinking to myself, I wonder if my plane's going to take off. And of course, probably not, because they can't land those seaplanes in waves, in big waves. It could tip it over. You could have an accident. So I kept listening and listening to see if there were going to be any sound of the planes coming over. This is from the top of Mount Franklin. I'm getting a really clear day, but it was very, very windy. And I was just going to show you, there's the sleeping giant. Can you kind of see it in there? It looks like a giant that's laying down in the water. And for any of you very smart rovers out there, more forest walking here, does anybody know what this fungus is? Just bizarre, purple, lavendery purple, strange little thing. And I finally came down to Rock Harbor, which is a very special place, again, for kayaking. You can rent kayaks when you come to Isle Royale as well. So if you were simply going to come and maybe camp in some of the campgrounds that are closer to the main areas, you can simply rent a kayak while you're there and not bring one over with you. I think it costs $20 to $30 to carry it with you on a ferry to come over. And of course, you could kayak over there. It's a pretty big open water kayak. And I know friends who do it, but you are out in the open. I was told that this was the most difficult trail on the entire island. And they said there were hundreds of blowdowns. I never saw those, so I'm not really sure what they were talking about. But maybe they were trying to warn people at Rock Harbor who are coming in flip-flops. I don't know. But here I am on the other side. Everything was closed, the cabins, the restaurants, and I was waiting for my plane. And I had to carry a lot of food. I mean, that's a lot of days to carry food. That was 8 nights of food. And I made sure I had a little bit left. Which always seems to happen with me. It's always the food that I don't want that's left, that tastes kind of not very interesting, but I had nutrition. And just when I thought I was going to have to spend another night, I heard the plane coming in and it came and got me. And it was a little bit bumpy taking off and a little bit of a bumpy landing as well. But look at this view of the islands and kind of looking down onto it. So it was really a special trip for me. Not going to be your typical trip because it wasn't just crowded. I was able to camp in group sites which was very, very special. I was able to get the best sights pretty much every day because there weren't as many people there. I didn't do as long days because something weird was happening with my body. And I was very much in a state of denial about what it was. But I soon found out that it was, I had no cartilage left in my hips. And that's a whole other story for another time. But suffice to say, I went to the doctor and he said, how are you even walking? We need to replace your hips. And I said, that's fine. Let's set a date. But before we do that, can I go on one more hike? And he said, well, it's going to hurt. And I said, yeah, well, I'll go really slow. So I went 41 miles through the Boundary Waters and the Pacific Trail. And then I had both of my hips replaced. And now I'm hiking again. So you can ask any questions you want about that. And I will thank all of you. This is a chance for questions. And it was just really fun talking. And I'm not sure, do I need to unshare or unmute, or what do I do now?
If you want to unshare, then you'll be able to see more of the folks.
Okay. And I will just, I'll just put that there. This is how you can follow me. I'm Blissful Hiker. You can take a picture of that and it goes right to my website. I'll leave that for 2 seconds. And then I will, I'm going to wait, what do I do? Sharing. Oh, did I just get out of the meeting? No. There I am. Okay. Great. Thank you everyone so much. And I'm happy to ask, answer questions. I'm looking through the chat. I stink and my feet hurt. Wait, that's not a question. Leeches. Oh yeah. Oh, leeches were horrible.
We add comments?
Oh, is it ultra or ultra hiking shoes? It's Altra, Altra, Altra. And I'm using Timps and also Olympus. And I'm not really sure which ones I'm set on. I'm really used to a stack in my shoe. I'm used to kind of a high heel, and these are like no stack. And I'm not sure if that's affecting like my Achilles and my shin. So you really, if you try them, I think they're quite different. But if you get them, make sure that you wear them a lot before you take them out on a hike. On like a backpack trip. So it's Altra, Altra. And if you want to give me your email, I think I put my husband put the link there to the Google spreadsheet. I will send you information about my my gear. What about blueberries? Blueberries, it was too late for blueberries. I didn't see any. I just saw the bushes. So no, I didn't get any other berries at all. Just a few thimbleberries and only near Windigo. So I was a little bit out of luck there.
Alison?
I love them. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a question that was quite early on from Gail, and she had a really great question. Do you do these hikes by yourself? And if you do, what sorts of safety precautions do you take?
Oh, that's a great question. I normally do hike by myself. A lot of people ask me, why doesn't Richard go hiking? And normally he just takes like the trowel and holds it up and says, this is the reason I don't like to go on long distance hikes, is because, I'd like to have plumbing and have a beer at the end of the day. So I don't always hike with him. Sometimes we go on backpack trips, but I do love the kind of spiritual grounding that happens when you hike alone. It's the one time that I feel that I'm speaking directly to the spirit. Although I made a joke about it today. I gave another presentation today and someone asked about that. And I said, it's more like I'm talking to myself, to the wiser piece of myself. But I start to get access to, to a sense of groundedness and a sense of slowing down. I don't have to answer to anyone as far as how fast I'm going to go or how far I'm going to go or how much time I'm going to take to look at a particular fungus and take its picture or how long I'm going to sit somewhere. I do like hiking alone. It does present a lot of risk because anything can happen. And on that first day when I went to Hugginen, because my hips were starting to deteriorate, which I didn't know, I thought I'd pulled a muscle in my groin. It just felt like a pulled muscle. I didn't have it was kind of like a weird strength balancy thing that was off. And I stepped up on a rock and I lost the grip with my stick and my foot went down between two rocks and it kind of went like this. I mean, I could have snapped it, but somehow my sneakers stopped me and I didn't. I mean, it just was more of like I was stunned. I didn't even have a sprain or anything, but that's the kind of thing that could just like take you out completely. So I take with me, I may even have it right here. I do. Look at that. I have it. I take the Garmin Mini and I have a little leash. I attach it to myself. I have it like attached to my own, like my belt buckle kind of thing, belt loop. So it's on me in case I was separated from my backpack. It's a two-way, so I can communicate with Richard, who's my husband, and say like, I'm starting my trip. I can set a tracking. He can actually follow me as I go. It pings it. And I can send him messages. They're the size of tweets, though. It's like 160 characters. So they're short. But the most important thing on here is this button right here, the SOS. You open it. I'm not going to set it off right now. It's not even on. And you have a little button. You have to hold it down. It counts down. So like if you were accidentally depress it. And that goes to search and rescue. And if I had hurt my ankle there and I couldn't move, that's what I would set off. And probably somebody in, Grand Marais would come. They'd probably have to bring a helicopter. I mean, it'd be a big ordeal. So, so those are the kinds of safety precautions. If I am in grizzly country, I take bear spray, but I don't carry anything like a gun or, the knife is my little tiny Swiss Army knife. I don't think that's going to do any good. So the most important safety that especially a woman alone has is your brain, is to make very, very smart decisions and follow your instincts, follow your gut about someone. Don't get into a car, for instance, on a hitch. If you have a bad feeling, just say, oh, you know what? I just got a call from my friend and I need to meet them. Or you can make things up. I'm just meeting my friends are just over the hill. You can make up stories, and always look bigger than you are. And you should be okay. Other questions? How much water are you carrying? Did you use the backcountry foodie recipes? So backcountry foodie is my friend Erin Mayhew Owens, and it's pretty cool what she does. She's a nutritionist and a thru hiker. She's done the PCT and the Colorado Trail, and she's created a membership sort of recipe organization. So she's not making the food for you that you buy in little packages and then fill with hot water. You make everything from what she's planned, but she's done it so carefully. So the exact calories, the exact nutrition that you're getting. She has all sorts of things that have, really great flavors. And yes, I use her recipes a lot. I took a stove on that trip. I'm not hiking with a stove these days, mainly because I just can't be bothered to use a stove. So I end up eating a lot of, she has cold soak stuff in there too, that you do with oatmeal or you do with pasta. I do a lot of my own dehydrating and then creating these meals. But maybe some of you have seen a video. I can also share that if you want to see it. There's a video about the shame that's in my pack, about how we carry a lot of junk food. And we're embarrassed to tell people what we really take. I said, I only have a half a pound of gummy bears. And of course, it was almost 2 pounds of gummy bears for a 7-day hike. I mean, it's gross, but it's something you want. So I try to be as healthy as I can be. I do think that things like dry things that you don't have to cook, cheese. If you're not a vegetarian, taking something like salamis last really, really long time. I make a lot of jerky. I do pastas that can be cold soaked or cooked. And you can take things like olive oil with you. That's one of the best of anything. It's the most nutrition packed into the lightest amount of weight and volume. But I do not suggest those little tiny packets that you carry it like in actually a little container, because those packets can explode. So yes, I highly recommend Backcountry Foodie. She's fabulous. And I do think they give some, and I also did a lot of shakes. She does things like shakes that are delicious. So, like those chocolate meal replacements, and then you add like a peanut butter to it and a milk to it and chia seeds. And it's, it's giving you water and liquid, but it tastes good. My mouth's watering right now. Water is a really big problem. So the places that I've had the biggest carries of my backpack trips are places in like deserts. So the Mojave Desert, the biggest carry was up San Jacinto Peak. I carried 4 liters. That's like my absolute limit. That is, what is it, 8 pounds of water. On the Arizona Trail, I only carried 2 liters. I just could not physically carry it anymore. I think it's partially because of my hips. I don't feel like I have that much strength on my legs to carry that much weight. So I tend to camel up a lot. And of course you pee a lot. I think that's what the guy who I can't think of his name, Pat, who gave the presentation last week, talked about that. If you drink a lot, you pee all the time. But you camel up a lot before you go, and you try to plan when you're going to be drinking. So I normally just use those smart water bottles or fake smart water bottles because they fit really well on my Sawyer Squeeze, and drink that way. Isle Royale is safer than most. Let me see if there's any other questions. Have you totaled your hiking distances? Oh, you mean like overall, Kim? Hiking distances of my life? Over 12,000 miles, probably. This hike was around 90. There's a lot of backtracking. Sometimes I do. I put my mileage in my blog when I'm like, I've done a day. I say, it was 20 miles here, 10 miles there, whatever. But I'm not your person if it, like how many miles you've gone. That's kind of not my jam. I'm sort of more the experiential person. So yeah, were your shoes and socks able to dry out easily? No, not on Isle Royale. It was too humid. So those pictures I showed you of the small lakes, it was very hot that day. The rock is super hot. So that's when you would lay everything out to dry. You can take out the, I have the Superfeet insoles, take those out. It helps it dry, and lay them out. I had all of these butterflies landing on my socks and shoes to kind of suck out the salt. It was kind of interesting. So that's when they would dry. Sort of the rule of thumb is to take extra pairs of socks so you can switch them off, hang the socks on the outside. But you do sort of need to get used to wearing wet shoes. But trail runners are better than boots as far as I'm concerned, because they dry faster. The water goes through them more quickly. Let's see. Isle Royale, safer than most places. No cars, no bears. Did you use... No trowel. I did not take a trowel with me because there were privies. But that's not always the safest thing to do, because what if you have to go between trails? So it's a very lightweight thing. It's worth taking. Northern Lights, I did not see Northern Lights. Do you talk to yourself or sing? After hearing this entire presentation, what do you think? Did I talk to myself? Yes. I do sing a lot. I whistle a lot. Whistling's a little bit easier than singing, because you can do both out and in. But talking to myself is a really interesting thing. There's that piece of it, like when you're on something difficult and you're like, okay, you've got this. You're here. You're okay. You're good. You kind of cheer yourself along. But when I was talking about the spirit and like these two parts of, the wise Alison and the, kind of needy and scared Alison, I often bring things to the trail, issues, whatever it happens to be, something I'm thinking about, something I'm working on, whatever. And I will say one thing, and then this sort of conversation happens. So these conversations go on. I talk to the animals sometimes. A joke was made about me on the PCT because I was making a lot of noise to make sure. This was up in the Cascades, and there's some grizzly up there. And I kept going around these willows, and that's when you want to make a lot of noise so they know you're coming. And I kept saying, there's no meat on these bones, bears. There's no meat on these bones. And somebody came walking around, and they were like, what? And they started calling me Bones. They thought that would be kind of a cute trail name, but I did not allow it. So experience mosquitoes at sunset. No mosquitoes in August. No. anything else you guys would like to know? I did not forage for anything. I would like to go next time with someone who knows about mushrooms, because I don't know enough and I don't feel safe enough to do that. So anyway, yeah, thank you. Anything else, you guys? It was really fun to share.
There's a couple more questions, Allison. One is how heavy was your pack?
Oh yeah. So I shoot for about a 12 to 13 pound base weight. And for those of you, pardon me repeating this if you know, but a base weight is doesn't include food or water or fuel. So those are the things that are variables. So I try to keep it as light as possible. And honestly, the things that are the heaviest, I kind of took too heavy of a sleeping bag there. I did not need a it's a 10 degree. I'm like a super cold sleeper. But I have like a whole battery. I think I even have it in here. I think I could show it to you. Here's my battery. So like I take this because I write every day and I do videos and you know, so this is really pretty heavy. I think it's maybe a half a pound. It's a RAV battery. I just try to keep my gear really light, so about 12 pounds. And then food. So when I just did the Wind River high route, that's the one where we had the shame in my pack and somebody brought a scale and we were weighing our food, which I try not to do because it's too embarrassing. We got my food to 12 pounds. Now this is for 7 very hard days at high altitude. So you needed really, calorie dense food. And it was fully packed and it was in an Ursack, which already has a little bit of weight to it. So it's, like this big, it's like a child that you were carrying. But every time you ate something, it was like, okay, I have 3 less ounces in my pack. I have 5 less ounces. So that's how it worked. Campfires allowed. Yes, they were. But in some of the campsites, they said no campfires in these campsites. And I don't know the reason. It may have had something to do with collecting wood and they just didn't want it to be over collected. I do not know the reason for that. But there were some specific sites that said, no campfires are allowed. But generally, I think, there were grates and things so you could. I don't tend to build a fire because I'm usually just kind of walking and then relaxing and go to sleep. It's not really that kind of jam. Yeah. Anything else, guys?
There's one question quite earlier on in the chat here. Did you experience mosquitoes at sunset?
Oh, no, I think I answered that. No, I did not have any bugs at all. I will tell you a little story. When I was on the PCT, there were horrible mosquitoes, of course, because you're going in summer and, in the mountains. But once you kind of get into August, they disappear. And I started sending things home because I didn't need, the warmest stuff and blah, blah, blah. I was getting into the desert. And for whatever reason, I took this thing that weighs an ounce, which is the Sea to Summit, that little bug burqa, kind of the bug net. And I sent it home too. And I remember thinking to myself, why am I putting this in the box? And I'm like, I don't need it. And what ended up happening is that in August, it was in Northern California, there were gnats, horrible gnats. Now they don't bite. It wasn't, but they swarm around your face. So there's like a picture of me wearing my buff, up to my eyeballs. I mean, try to breathe in a buff going uphill. It's like, it's up to here, but they land in your eyes. They want the moisture. So I have sworn, I don't even care if I'm like hiking in Antarctica. I am taking a bug net with me everywhere I go. Well, that's kind of ridiculous. Maybe not snowshoeing, next week or something. But I think it's really important to be protected because you don't know if there's kind of like a gnat season or, and some swarm that's coming up because it warmed up or something like that. But I did not have mosquitoes that badly. That picture I showed you early in the presentation from the Superior Hiking Trail, I went in June. And that was particularly awful. I was completely covered. Yeah. Yeah, great. Thanks, guys.
Are there any last questions for Alison?
I can put this in here again if you guys want to. Let me see if I can share this. This is if you are interested in more resources, like, oh, I sent that to Sue. Didn't mean to send it to everyone. Everyone in meeting, let's see if that works. Try that. It's a Google spreadsheet. If you'd like to share your email, I can send you more information, the gear closet video on something. Is it a more predominant way of saying, oh, Isle Royale. Oh, isn't that funny? I don't know. Is it Isle Royale? It's French, right? I guess it'd be Isle Royale. I don't know. I've always said Isle Royale, but it might be Isle Royale. Does anyone, maybe we should take a vote. Who says, let's see how many hands go up for Isle Royale. And I'm going to put my hand up. Yeah. And okay, that's a good count. And how many say Isle Royale? Yeah. Well, I think it's fine. I think either one would be acceptable. That might be about halvesies. The Rangers call it Royal. All right, Kim's made it is either Royal French or, oh, okay, there you go. The Rangers say it. All right, so the Rangers have it. Okay. Thanks, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yay. Thank you so much, Allison. That was fabulous.